Well, good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for coming. My name is Nancy Swanner. I am the founding director of the Granger Cobb Institute for Senior Living, and my role here today is very minimal but important. I want to thank you all for being here, and you're in for a real treat today. Our panel is just a bunch of rock stars. So there'll be a lot of fun. And I would like to welcome to the stage Chancellor Elizabeth Chilton, who actually will be introducing our panel for us today. So thank you for being here.
Would you all mind coming up to our panelists so they can see your lovely faces as you can wave as I'm introducing you? I'm just going to hop up here for a second. Thank you all very much for being here. And I was honored that Nancy asked me to give these introductions, and I just got to meet each of them and learn a little bit more. And thank you, panelists, for being here and participating in this discussion. We're really delighted to have everyone here for what promises to be an engaging panel today on the technology for the business of aging. About to hit a particular decade myself, so maybe I'll learn a few things here. WSU's Granger Cobb Institute is developing the next generation of senior living specialists and leaders, and the Institute is made possible by partnerships with leading industry professionals like those who are here with us today. So now it's my pleasure to introduce our moderator and panelists. First of all, Steve Morin is a founder of Senior Living Foresight, a senior living industry thought leadership publication, and he is passionate about helping the senior living sector grow and flourish. Steve has spent decades in multiple facets of the senior living industry from both the provider and the vendor perspectives. Erin Hayes is co-founder and chief revenue officer of Enquire, a leading innovator in the senior care industry. She's the driving force behind Enquire Customer Relationship Management, a CRM designed according to best practices for nurturing leads through the sales cycle and facilitating the admissions of residents and patients. Industry best practices combined with cutting-edge innovation have made Enquire the fastest growing CRM in senior housing and healthcare. Kyle Rand is co-founder and CEO of Rendeavor, a virtual reality platform helping seniors combat social isolation through the power of shared experiences. Kyle studied cognitive decline in the aging population at Duke University. After a personal experience moving his own grandmother into a senior living community, Kyle experienced firsthand the effects social isolation has on seniors and co-founded Rendeavor as a result. Under Kyle's leadership, Rendeavor is changing the lives of thousands of seniors in more than 450 senior living communities worldwide. Most recently, Kyle oversaw Rendeavor's collaboration with UC Santa Barbara to start a multi-site clinical trial to observe the positive impact virtual reality has on seniors. In 2019, he was honored on Forbes 30 Under 30 list for the profound impact his work has had on the senior living industry. And last but not least, Matt Reiners is a Forbes 30 Under 30 recipient as well, Argentum Senior Living Leader, Aging Media Network Future Leader, National Association of Activity Professionals Business Liaison, Bridge the Gap Ambassador, and SBA Co-Young Entrepreneurs of the Year Award for New England. Being a fellow New Englander originally, I like that. We have more in common than I realized. Thank you all very much for being part of our panel today. And now I'm going to turn it over to you and give you back your mic.
Thank you.
Take the stairs.
Sure. Hi, guys. Hello. I'm good. Okay, very good. So I actually want to start. So I'm going to tell you, I have a not very secret agenda for our whole panel today, and I know that everybody shares that. I want you guys to walk out of here and go, man, I think maybe I should go work in senior living, because you'll have a good time doing hospitality, those are your hospitality people, but you will change the world if you go to work in senior living. But I want to actually start by asking you a question. I know I'm really going to make things a mess. I'm wondering if maybe somebody could grab the microphone here. When I say senior living to you, And you got to be honest. I know, pretend that the adults in the room are not really here. When I say senior living to you, or maybe I say, you know what? Senior living is in your future. What do you think? Anybody brave enough to raise their hand? I was afraid. There we go. I got one back here.
It's something that's definitely a little bit scary, right? Especially like thinking about loved ones moving into something that maybe isn't going to be the most fun for them or that they don't want. So I think generally you think of like as a bad thing, like nursing homes, or maybe as a good thing, you think of like group homes or something like that.
Cool. Thank you. Anybody else? I think there was another hand over here.
I'm going to go to a very specific student that I know has this answer.
Oh, you're going to pick on someone. That's awesome.
Sorry, can you repeat the question?
Yeah. So when I say senior living, what do you think? Or maybe making it better or worse, I'm not sure which. I come and I tell you that I've looked in my crystal ball and I see you living in senior living for, I don't know, 20 years. How do you feel about that?
I think that it's a great industry for relationship building. I think it's one of the few areas in hospitality that it's sort of part of the job is interacting with these people on sort of a daily basis and establishing a very deep relationship with them.
Cool. I really like that. Anybody else willing to? Here we go. Awesome.
Well, I took Professor Swinger's class, so I might have a different outlook on this now, but I would be super excited. It's like a college dorm all over again. So party it up at the senior living communities. And it feels like it's a very good place for relationship building. And I'd be excited.
Cool.
Happy hours.
Yes, happy hours.
So I'm going to try. We'll keep the microphone close by because we may want to have some more interaction to start with. Feel free to ask your own questions, but I'd actually like to start with you guys. Why do you love senior living? And I know you do because we've had conversation. These are all friends. I knew them before I got here. Erin?
I'll start. Hi, everyone. Can you hear me okay? I'm Erin Hayes. Great to see everyone here. So glad you came. Very excited to be on campus again. I love college. I went back multiple times. Why did I get into senior living? Prior to this, I was in aerospace. I worked on some NASA satellite programs. And, when the reason we got into it is because my husband and I were talking to my mom and she was putting my grandparents into senior housing. And it wasn't a great experience for her. And at the time, my husband was in commercial real estate, working with a company that did call centers for universities. So if you as a student or an applicant had a question about the application process or financial aid, it would route to this contact center. And so we thought, why couldn't we do this for senior housing and make it a great experience and have someone always answering the phone? So we moved into my in-laws' basement and we cashed in our life savings and we quit our jobs and we took a leap of faith and went to our first conference, and we did not have a company. We just, pretended. And we signed up our first client, and the rest is really history. And I think, in going to that conference and in starting in the senior living industry, it was just so different than what I was used to. I was working in financial planning for space, the external tank, if you remember that from the shuttle. It was so different because everyone in the industry was so nice and so passionate, and they were there for a reason, not just because they had a degree that got them there. And so I think that, and you guys will tell your stories, but I think it's always something that kind of touches your heart. You think, this is what I want to do. I don't just want to go to a job every day. And so we really can make a difference. And I think that's how I got here.
Cool. I love it. Yeah. Kyle.
Yeah, just to really emphasize that, I think one of the best things about working in this industry is that everybody has a reason to be here. Like absolutely everybody. Like you can wake up and have a conversation with anybody in the industry and you're going to connect on the love that we all share for making the world better for older adults, which is awesome. And then the other thing is that the sheer reality is that we're all getting older, right? Like the aging process is something that everybody has to have a connection to, because hopefully we're all going to be 90 years old and living it up and having happy hours and silent discos at senior living communities. Yeah. For me personally, I very much grew up in this space. I grew up in upstate New York, same as Matt. Spent a lot of time volunteering in a local senior living community. I went to school. I wasn't quite sure it was my calling yet. I went to school and I studied two things. I studied cognitive decline in the aging population, and then I studied neuroengineering. So I was doing a lot of work with older adult models and also with monkey models. And you may be surprised to know this, but it's way more fun to work with older adults. And similarly, unfortunately, my college career was bookended by losing both of my grandmothers, and seeing my grandmother on my dad's side, just how hard the process is, not just for her, but for every single member of our family. Once you experience it, you want to change it. And as you said, the rest is history.
Yeah. So I think why I love this industry, it's almost like business with soul. You can really do any aspect of business, whether it be finance, sales, marketing, operations, and you can feel good at the end of the day. My story is a little bit different, where I was kind of slapped in the face by senior living. So before Eversound, my co-founder, Jake, and I had started another company helping people around the country throw silent disco events. Has anybody ever heard of a silent disco? Yeah, seeing some head nods. For those that don't know, a silent disco, imagine a room full of people dancing to no out loud music, and everything is being played through wireless headphones. So it's the most absurd thing you would ever see, but people love it, and they do it to get around noise restrictions. And while we were starting this company, a few things kind of happened simultaneously, where we started getting phone calls from senior living communities basically asking for help. And my view of senior living before then was just the old nursing home, right? The place that didn't smell good, the place you did not want to put your loved ones in. And we started getting these calls asking for help, because what they were finding was hearing during group programs was not a good situation. Everyone's hearing was all over the place. And they're looking for a wireless headphone system designed for groups, which has individual volume control, which is basically a silent disco system. And it was around this time where I saw what my own grandmother was going through. She lived to be 93, lived in a senior living community, and honestly, her quality of life sucked. And that all really stemmed from her inability to hear. She didn't want to go out and couldn't be social because she couldn't hear what was going on. And it was around this time where, we were in our mid-20s at that time, didn't really know any better. Jake was still in college at the time, and we just started walking into communities and doing demos with the silent disco system and just kind of packaging it a little bit differently. And we had, I remember this gentleman, Vern Rockcastle, 93 years old, independent living, come up to us, wore hearing aids, and basically said, and he used it for a resident council meeting. And he said, "This is the first time in 7 years that I've been able to hear everything," and thanked us. And we kept having these very similar reactions at all these other communities we were doing these demos at, where we had staff crying and seeing residents just coming out of their shell for the ability to hear. And that's where I fell in love with it, was seeing those reactions and those interactions and getting to know these people in these communities that are just so much wealth of knowledge, and are just, you realize that they are people, and they have a whole story behind them too.
So staying with you, would you move into senior living in a couple of years?
In a couple of years, hell yeah, I would. Yeah, I think when you think of senior living, especially some of these places that are being opened and built now, like, are freaking nice. Like, I walk into some of these places and they feel like a high-end apartment building that I would see in Boston, which is home for me now. And yeah, I think I'm excited. I know I'll pass it down the way here.
Yeah, I think all of us would say yes, if. Right. There are some senior living communities that really, really get it right, and that understand that ultimately, as you get older, you're not just looking for someone to take care of you. You're looking to continue living your life. And there are a number of communities, I think this is the best growing trend, that really care about lifestyle being a core fundamental part of how they're building their community dynamics.
Agreed. I tried to put a deposit down the other day for one I was in. There's a whole spectrum, but if you spend time, you've got the elaborate, Inspire in Upper East Side, New York City. It's incredible. That's the one I try to move into.
Same.
It's amazing. If you ever in New York, just let us know. I'll get you a tour. And then, but then when you actually go into assisted living, a smaller, maybe a memory care, and you see how the residents are thriving, you just don't know what's going to happen in the future and what kind of care you might need. But, the people that work in each community really care. And so I think that, there are the really elaborate ones, but I think that once you get to know the staff and you know what they do on a regular basis, I definitely would live there if I had to.
So I'm going to confess my story is a little bit different. My first foray into senior living, believe it or not, I was probably younger than you guys. And I had a friend who bought this little dumpy 15-bed, what we would call board and care. Basically, it was a remodeled home and was doing it. And he started describing how rich he was going to get. And I thought, that's pretty cool. So I found one to buy, and then I built a couple. And my goal was, at that time, was to make enough money so I'd never have to move into one of my own buildings. I'm sort of embarrassed to confess that now. But along the way, I've learned that was really a dumb idea. And of course, senior living has gotten a lot better. So you guys are sitting here, you here for, some of you are senior living folks, some of you are here for other reasons. You guys it's been a long time since I've been in college. You're talking to students. Why should they consider senior living?
Just like really quickly, hopefully what you've already heard in like the 10 minutes we've been talking is that this is something that ultimately, no matter what, you will find a calling in and you will fall in love with. Like as a tech founder, if you know anything about building and running startups, it's really hard, like really, really hard. A lot of people burn out. I still can say with complete confidence, every single day I wake up with a huge smile on my face, excited to go to work. 7 years into building this company. And I don't think that would be true if it wasn't coming from such a place of heart.
Yeah, and I would say my first job out of college, I was a telemarketer. And oh my gosh, talk about working for the weekend and just being depressed. And I'm 33 now. I still have no idea what I want to do when I get older, but I think there is just a unique opportunity if you're exploring your options out there. And senior living, again, I mentioned it before. No matter what your specialty is, you can do something in senior living with that. I think there's a big opportunity too, especially on the more new age marketing stuff that I know college kids are all really good at. And I think senior living is looking for opportunities for help on that. And I just think too, if you want to feel good at the end of the day and do something with purpose and, wake up feeling excited, like Kyle had mentioned, like I've yet to find an industry that provides that besides this.
Yeah, my first job was selling copiers. So I've been kicked out of every building in Denver. No soliciting. No, I think that one takeaway, hospitality versus senior living, which senior living is a form of hospitality. I have a friend who works for Marriott and has done that a while. She's had the terrible shifts, the overnight, wants to work her way into management. And I said, why don't you look at senior living? Because if you want to work your way to be an executive director, which is the CEO of the community, so it's management, you're going to get there a lot faster than sometimes working through the ranks in a hotel system. And you get the same kind of experience because it is a lot hospitality. And I think the industry is moving towards that. So by the time you all graduate, it'll be a lot more, like a hotel system. But I think that there's a great career path there. And then also not just thinking about working in a community, but outside, there's so many different tech companies and things you can do that really support the communities. And a lot of owners of communities are my best friends now. We work very closely together. So I think when you start thinking about career path and growth, the career path within senior living is strong, and there's a lot of opportunity.
So it's really interesting when you look at the four of us, we are all entrepreneurs, the three of you in the technology space, me in the publishing space. And so maybe it leaves the impression that's sort of the only way to go, and that's not. So I'd actually like to sort of have each of you maybe just talk about the paths that you see for people in senior living. The one other thing I want to add, and I think Matt, you or Kyle sort of touched on this, is that I came out of the Silicon Valley tech world, and you guys don't know what phone books are anymore, right? But you could create a whole phone book, a whole directory list of people who were asses in the business. I have a mental list of people who are asses in the senior living, but it's less than 10. And that's a very, very unusual, wonderful, wonderful thing. So just talk to me. Actually, let's do it this way in the context of, Aaron, I'd actually like to have you talk a little bit about what you've talked sort of at a very high level about your journey, but talk about the best parts about it and maybe talk about the worst parts about it in founding a tech company in senior living.
Well, mostly good parts, except, I work with my husband. So, we're still married.
Now.
Truly. No, it's been, like I said, the best part is really the people. So just to kind of highlight that again, but no, our journey, I mean, lots of grit, lots of grind. But, not the only way to go. I think that, one thing that when you kind of think of an industry, even senior living, one thing that I've been drawn to is just the data piece and how much we can use data to improve the lives of our older adults. And so that kind of drew me because I'm a finance background. So I like the data. I'm actually like, I'll drink wine and, make reports and stuff. It's very cool.
Same.
So,
Third
so
that
I
one,
think,
but whiskey for me. So.
but I think that's one way to go. And so we're bringing a lot of people into the industry, our students that have studied, data analytics. We as an industry have been a little bit behind on the data piece. And so, bringing some people, some younger, students, some new ideas into our world has been very helpful. And now we're starting to create data models where we know, how long someone stays, how we get them to stay longer, how we can really measure that, fall risks, all of that we can kind of bring together. And so I think that I started in the tech world in sales and marketing, built a CRM. And then recently we merged with a company that has a care and revenue and financial product that operators use, and EMAR, which is medication management. And then we also merged with another CRM company that does training, sales training, which we can expand to the care training for the care teams and to the business office. So there's a lot, in the operational, there's a lot of different aspects of what we do now. But I don't know if that answers your question, but I think that, that's kind of how I got here.
So no, that's really good. So so you've got young kids.
Yes.
And as you're talking to them, would you advise that they go into senior living?
Yes. I mean, they think they're going to work for me, but they're 7 and 8. So, it's just, they work for free right now.
And and it's interesting to have your children working for you because I have one of those.
Oh, yes. So no, I mean, I think there, you could say, hey, my daughter's Hayden. Hayden, you could go to school for, analytics, computer science. And I think that that's going to be really relevant for what we do in senior living. So I think that, there's not really a path you need to take. I think that it's like any other industry.
Okay, cool. Kyle?
Yeah, it's probably worth just taking a step back and sharing some of the stats behind the rise of this demographic. And I'm sure we all know them. It's 2030, I think it is, when there will be more people over the age of 55 than there will under the age of 18, something like that. It's the fastest growing demographic in the US. It's one of the fastest growing demographics across the world. And with it, it's not only a quickly growing demographic, it also, I'm probably going to get this a little bit wrong, so don't quote me on it. I think it's something like 51% of all consumer spending in the United States is currently done by people who are 55 plus. And this is just going to continue to shift as more and more people get older and older. What is it? 10,000 people every single day turn 65 in the United States right now. And with all of these stats, more and more companies are going to be turning to the aging demographic and figuring out how can we work with them or for them, which is just going to create so many opportunities to take any wealth of knowledge of what it means to care for an older adult and create opportunities across every single industry. I'll share one of the things that I'm most excited about within Rendeavor. We got, after something like 5 years of applications, we got a clinical trial funded by the National Institute on Aging. It's really cool. It's really cool. We use VR and we have residents of senior living communities and their family members who are living at a distance. So they could be living in a different state. We just shipped a headset down to Colombia in South America. They could literally be living over in Europe, like anywhere in the world. And every single week we bring them together in VR and they explore the world. They connect on whatever's scheduled for the day. And with this clinical trial, we've gotten to build out a full-scale research team. And it's been really wonderful because in Boston, there's like 50 colleges in and around Boston. The recruiting process for clinical researchers has been like so amazing. We have people from every single background turning to the projects that we're working on and saying, oh, this is something I could get behind. This is experience that I want. And that's just going to continue, right? As these trends keep moving, as more money goes into this industry, more products are going to be built and more products are going to need validation. And so there's going to be nothing but opportunity to work in really every single sector.
So what other areas, we've talked technology, where do you see the biggest opportunities are for them?
I'm so biased towards technology.
Okay.
I do think that one of the most beautiful things to work in is the resident engagement space. It's something that I think we're all seeing it. It's one of those things where we really need to be putting more time, more effort, and operators are realizing they need to spend more money because ultimately, again, people are looking for a lifestyle, not just a place to sleep every night. And as that space continues to grow and as new opportunities continue to come in, it's like it is the space that is defined by heart. And really, I think the activities teams are the hearts of every single community.
What was the question again?
So the question I'd like to, where do you see the opportunities? I'd like you to do a little deeper dig into you've talked quite a bit about your founding journey.
Yeah.
What was the best part? What's been the hardest part?
Yeah. The best part has just been seeing these stories coming out of these communities and just how it's been impacting in a positive way. And, I've talked to adult children who basically have thanked us and said Eversound's been a godsend to them. And just gives me the goosebumps for that. The bad side or, the tough side, starting a company is tough. I've lost all my hair. It's illegal for me to drive at night without my glasses. I'm so nearsighted now, just been staring at a computer screen for 14 hours a day for the last decade
it's not
or so.
required. Though.
Not required. Yeah. I guess the VR world's a little different, but in terms of it's always been tough scaling, building companies, hiring people. That's always tough. Trying to find people that are culture fits. We've learned a lot of the lessons the hard way. I think every lesson we've learned, we've failed at one way or another. And I think as you're leaving college, doing that within your 20s, I think it's a really important decade to just learn what you don't want to do. So, we were talking about this the other day and Kyle, and I'll steal what he has said because I love stealing Kyle's stuff. It's basically just being like a yes person during that time and just trying to figure out new opportunities and doing that. I think he brings up a good idea on the activity side, but I also think there's just, a huge opportunity to break through into senior living. I mean, I know that there's people that are looking to hire and looking to hire people across the spectrum in terms of where you can have impact within those communities.
Cool. Erin?
I think a good place to start too could be the sales side of a community. And everyone hears sales but it's a really important part of our industry because without margin, we can't have mission. And so, we need to keep communities full so that we can enrich the lives of the older adults that are living there and the residents. And so there's a really good entry point there. You don't have to have a lot of experience and you'll get trained. You'll learn every aspect of the community because really operations is a part of the sales and the teams that when you bring someone in and you're showing them, what the community is all about. It really brings in everything from the kitchen staff to operations to the front desk. And so I think that's a really good entry point. And what I say when I speak to people about sales is, it's our responsibility as sales team members to make sure that the family finds the right place for their loved one. And so we need to answer the phone. We need to give them a great look at the community. We need to be present and learn about them because if we're not doing that, then they may move in somewhere that's not going to be the best fit. And so I think you can make a lot of impact with that.
You're good. No, I think everybody should work in sales at one point in their life. I agree with
good.
that.
Yes, me too.
Yeah. To dovetail, are there comms people here? Communications majors? Anybody? Really? One? Okay, sweet. I would also say this is probably the best industry to work in for the comms side. We just onboarded a new VP and we were introducing her to our PR team we've been working with for a couple of years. And our PR team comes on and they're like, you chose a great place. They have all sorts of clients. They're like, Rendeavor is our favorite client. 100%, because every single meeting we have fun. We talk about actively changing people's lives, and we then get to go out and pitch to news stories about people's lives changing. And like, I'm sure Matt and I have like a million stories that we could share about how our technology is very, very fundamentally transforms someone's day to day.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Comms is a really interesting place. I think, we're all looking for those feel good stories. We actually have a community group that's going to be they've got 45 locations in the month of March. At the end of it, they're all going to do a silent disco on the same exact day. So be on the lookout for that. But I think, I echo the statement of being in sales. I think we're all in sales in some capacity, whether you're selling yourself. And I think it's a great skill to continue to fine tune. Again, my first job out of college was a telemarketer. I had to make 150 dials a day, and but it gave me some chops, so it was good.
Like, videos of like babies hearing for the first time. Could be doing that every single day.
So, Matt, I had to get this in for you. You have a brand new child, right?
Speaking
that we see all the time.
She'll be 2 in June.
LinkedIn.
Yes. Yeah. She'll be 2 in June.
Yeah. So, puppies and babies, right? So, you're planning her life. I'm sorry, I should know.
Planning
His life, her life.
Her life. Yeah.
You want her working in senior living?
I'd be okay to that. I mean, I think first and foremost, I just want her to be a kind human being. I mean, wherever her journey takes her, I'd be down to have her work in senior living though, for sure.
Okay, cool. Yeah. So I want to do a little bit of storytelling. Because I'd like to talk about the impact it has on people's lives. And since we sort of talked a little bit about this, but I didn't do that. I'm actually going to start with this story. I want to tell you about Bob. Bob lived in a memory care community, someplace here in the Pacific Northwest. I don't remember quite where it was. And he'd been a business guy. And as is true with memory care people, his mind was changing. It was failing him. And he had a caregiver who'd come in every few days and give him a shower. And so caregiver walks into the room one day and says, Bob, it's time to take a shower. Don't want to have a shower. Not going to take a shower. It happens a lot. No big deal. Caregiver goes away. A couple days later, next day comes in. Bob, really got to do a shower. No, not going to do a shower. A few days later, not going to do it. Family gets called. Oh, man, your dad's not taking a shower and getting a little right. Can you come and talk to him? Daughter comes in. Got to change. Got to shower, Dad. Nope, not showering. Well, why? I'm not showering. And I know this happens because I had this happen with my mom in a senior living community after a stroke. And the executive director comes in and talks, and Bob, you got to do this. And finally, everybody gets in there with Bob, you got to take a shower. And they're talking about it through this whole building. There's independent living and assisted living, and everybody knows about this Bob. And you can sort of, if you walk down the hallway and you get too close to his room, you can kind of smell this odor. And finally they go and say, Bob, you're going to go into a nursing home and they're going to lock you into this place. And they're just threatening, and he's just not going to take a shower. His caregiver over in another unit, and this is a really, really good community, so this wouldn't have happened every place. She heard about this story and she was hearing about Bob. And one of the things that she knew about Bob was that he used to love to dance, right up your alley, Matt.
Speaking my language.
He used to love to dance. And so this caregiver got an idea. And she went over and she walked into Bob's room and she said, hey, Bob, would you like to go dancing with me? And immediately he got this big smile on his face. Oh, yeah, I'd love to go dance. And all of a sudden, these memories start firing that had been dormant, right? And she says, well, Bob, if we're going to go dancing, we got to get dressed up. And so, is that okay? Oh, yeah, let's do that. She said, well, can I help you get a shower? And she walks him in and she showers him and she shaves him. And she goes to his closet and he's got this tuxedo that his family had left there. And she helps him get dressed into this tuxedo, and he's got these shiny shoes and this black and white tuxedo and this cummerbund and this bow tie. And they walk out into the common area and they put on some dance music for his generation. And they start to dance and they twirl and they dance, and it was just a boombox. And he's got this big smile because it changed the life of Bob. It changed the life of the caregiver. It changed the life of really everybody who touched that community. That's the opportunity you have in senior living. Your turn to tell stories.
Yeah, story time. Let's do it.
I got one.
Yeah.
So I think one of the most impactful stories that I came across, apart from my own grandmother trying Eversound before she passed away, was a couple that actually involved dancing as well. We have the video, happy to share with anybody afterwards, but what we were told, so there's a video of this couple, it's the Thomas family. They've been married for over 40 years. And for the last 5 years, Mr. Thomas has been living with dementia and Mrs. Thomas has been his primary caregiver. And when she could no longer take care of him, she moved him into the local community and would still go visit him daily. And on one day in particular, they used Eversound. So just imagine like a wireless headphone system designed for groups. He's wearing it, she's wearing it. They're listening to their wedding song together again, and they're dancing and swaying and basically singing to each other, like, I'll stand by you. And then Mrs. Thomas went on to say, like, I'll stand by you, right? Like, and they kiss and they embrace. And Mrs. Thomas had said it was like the first time in those 5 years where she felt like a wife and not just a caregiver. And then we went on to learn, this is a natural part within senior living. Unfortunately, Mr. Thomas passed away, but that moment in time meant so much to that family, that 20-second clip that we were told that they actually played that video at his funeral. And if you're in life to give these positive moments, these moments of connection, these moments of engagement, these moments of love, that's what gets me going. I still get goosebumps, and I've told that story probably like 300 times already. Yeah,
I've seen that video so many times, and I got goosebumps.
Yeah,
I love it. Okay, who here has like a super vibrant grandparent? Anybody? Like super, like, yeah. Okay, parent maybe. All right. Pretend you do. Or I'll tell you the story of Mickey. And if you have a vibrant grandparent or older adult in your life, just think of this person. So this was pretty early on. This was, I think, 2017. We went pretty early in the history of this company. We went to a local community in Connecticut, and we were doing this big group VR session. And it was like a room like this, and they had all the chairs laid out in a circle, and the room was packed, and all the staff members were at the door. Everybody was watching. It was the first time. It was one of the first demos we had ever did. So it was one of the first like big group VR sessions in senior living, and it was the energy in the room was phenomenal. People were just like laughing and like talking, and it was just so hype. And about halfway in, they wheeled in a woman named Mickey. And they brought her right into the middle of the circle, the ring of the circle. And her caregiver came running over to me. I was like, I need you to understand. Mickey was the light of our community. Like, she knew absolutely everybody by name. She was the first person to say hi to you in the morning. She always had this big smile on her face, big wave. She was just this light. And then she was diagnosed with dementia. And in the community, they had an upstairs that was locked to a locked memory care unit, and they moved her in there. And her first symptom was expressive aphasia. And so what happened was she went from being this big, boisterous personality to losing her ability to communicate. And as a result, she just fell silent. She stopped smiling. She stopped living. And her caregiver, like, tears were welling up in his eyes. And he says, like, I just want to see Mickey smile again. I just want to hear her laugh again. I just really want Mickey back. And again, this is like early days for us, right? Like, this is one of our first demos. And me and my co-founder look at each other and we're like, what are we going to do? And we look at our platform. We're like, we got it. And we put Mickey in a headset, and then we brought her into a room full of golden retriever puppies. And like, that big smile comes across her face and she just like leans into the experience. It's probably like a 7-minute long immersive puppy experience. And throughout those 7 minutes, she is leaning in. She's calling to the puppies. At one point, she kisses to them. And then she starts like saying these little things to them, like saying like, oh, come here. It's like, oh, I can almost feel it. By the end of the session, she took the headset off and she started talking, fully talking, to the point that she followed me and my co-founder out of the building, holding onto his arm, telling us, you need to use this in schools. Could you imagine being a kid and learning through this technology? Which means that she went from 3 months of not being able to communicate, losing that like core element of her personality, to pitching us business ideas with one 30-minute VR session. And again, that is what you can do in senior living.
So before I go to Aaron, Kyle, I realize I've actually been a little bit remiss with you. You have said, I'm this VR guy, but I don't think you've ever really talked about what that means and what do I... So, probably everybody's played with VR. I've got a VR headset that's gathering dust under my bed that I played with a few times and don't. So can you talk a little bit about what happens in a VR session? What am I seeing and what am I doing?
Happy to. Very happy to. I will also quickly say I'm not a VR guy. Actually, one of the big things we talk about at our company is the magic happens when the headset comes off. Because what happens in VR is we put people, like the 4 of us could be sitting wearing a headset, and we take people back to meaningful locations from their past. We take them back to things that bring them joy. We bring them to new places all around the world. And through each experience, we build in this like conversational platform that helps people start to communicate and start to connect. And our core driving principle as a company is that the foundation of human connection is positive shared experiences. And what happens as you get older is your opportunity to experience new things might start to shrink. And if it starts to shrink, your ability to form new relationships, especially if someone new moves down the hall, it can be a little bit tough. And so what we do with VR is we allow people to try new things, to check off bucket list items, to experience the world together, and then through that form relationships. And it might sound super duper far-fetched, but one of the first things we did was a study with MIT H Lab. And we found that after just 2 weeks of daily shared experiences in VR, residents had statistically significant decrease in their depression scores and increases in multiple measures of social mental health, including people actually started to trust each other more, which we all know is the foundation of human relationships. And it has a tight neurochemical tie to oxytocin, which we all know is like the love hormone. So at a super high level, like that's what we do. We get people to connect by offering them an ability to experience the world together.
Great. Thank you. Aaron, a story.
Ooh, how do I follow that? Well, I'm more on the, the initial side, basically the residents or the prospects that don't want to move in, because when you think about it, it's not really something, unless you know a lot about it, that you'd be like, hey, I think I'm going to move into senior living. Usually there's an event that happens. And I always say it's not something you do all the time. You maybe do it one time where you put your loved one into senior living and then you're done. So it's not something you practice for or you get good at, which is why we get a lot of calls from people if they need recommendations, because we know it. And so when we started our company, just a little bit of background, we started with the contact center, which it's a call center, but we do chat calls. We respond to web forms, so inquiries over the web. And when we did this, when we went to this conference, they said, yeah, we want to come see your call center. And my husband and I look at each other and we're like, we don't have a call center. So I don't know. What are we going to do? So we had 500 square feet in Colorado in this kind of crappy building. And there was there's 2,500 square feet next to us that was vacant. And I'm like, we got to get that space. And he was like, oh my gosh, we live in a basement. We have no money. We bootstrapped our company. So we didn't, it was all what we did. And I said, I don't care. We have to. So we owned our cars. We're from the Midwest. We owned our cars. So we said, we'll put this up as collateral. We'll sign a personal guarantee. for the rent on this place. And rent in Colorado is not cheap. So they said, well, we're going to be out in 3 weeks to come visit your call center. We're like, great. That sounds good. So we busted through the wall and there was a company moving out down the hall and they had cubes. And my husband walked over there and he's like, hey, I was in commercial real estate. It's going to cost you a lot of money to move these cubes out. We'll just take them out of here. And the guy's like, I don't know. Let me get back to you. So then the guy, researched it. He's like, okay, you can have our cubes. We're like, great. So we spent a whole weekend moving, which is like manual labor. I mean, it was hard. And we had to buy his whole staff barbecue, I think. So we did that. But so good trade. So we moved it. So I also knew a guy who owned a temp agency. So I called him and I said, Greg, I need 5 temps. He's like, for what? I go, I don't know, but I need them to sit in this office when they come. And he goes, okay. So they came in and I was like, just come in, get on the phone, call your mom. I don't care. That's fine. We'll train, we'll get you trained. And so we had them come in, they flew in and we sat down and they were like, oh, this is great. So we'll sign it to your contract. And we're like, oh my gosh, what do we do now? So we were the call center. So my husband and I took shifts. And so we have taken calls from all over the country of prospects calling in to see if they wanted to move into senior living. And so I used to work Sundays. I worked Sundays for 2 years with one of our employees, Kathy, who's actually still with us. Love her. And I had a guy call in, Gary, and he had been to some of the events at this independent living. So he's looking for himself and he called and he goes, oh, no one usually answers. I said, well, I'm here. What do you want to talk about? And we talked, I think, for 45 minutes. And he said his wife had passed away and he always thought he would be he said, I didn't plan for this. I thought that, I would be honestly the one that went first. And he said, I'm super lonely. And I said, let me send you a brochure. And I sticky noted everything, based on what we talked about and sent it to him. And then, found out from the executive director that he ended up moving in a few months later. And it's just really, it was really fulfilling to see that happen. And sometimes, they just don't know, they don't want to cross that bridge and move. And I think that it's really what's great about this industry is it's our responsibility to talk to them about what's important to them and not just trying to sell them. And I think listening, and I think it's not, we call it sales, but it's such a different feeling. So you get so much more out of it than, selling a copier, for example.
So I want to actually pause for a minute and see if there are any questions from the audience.
Don't be shy.
Got some up here. There you go.
Thank you. Hi, this is Subin. I'm a faculty in hospitality and I'm in the Everett campus. I was so fascinated by that, I think, about the story about the VR for seniors. I personally have my own VR project with, one of our PhD student, Demi Dong, with wine drinking. So we applied VR as a way to enhance the wine experience. Like when you put the VR gears on, like I can take you to the wineries in France. And then when you sip the glass of wine, from France, you may feel better. Right?
Do that.
Oh, really?
They will really do that. Yeah.
And I never thought about, using VR to senior people because I said they may have some hesitation to use this kind of advanced technologies, right? They may have fears and they may feel some motion sickness after using it. And didn't you have that kind of like negative feedback when you're working with the seniors using VR?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. We've been doing this for 7 years and we get that question all the time still. So there's this big societal disbelief that seniors and technology don't mix, right? It's been proven to be wrong time and time and time again. What really happens is older adults who don't have as much of a background, right, haven't grown up with technology the same way we have, if things are frustrating, it's a lot easier to dismiss, right? It's a lot easier to push away and say, no, that's not for me. And so it's really important whenever you're building a technology for this population to be very, very UX centric. And so in the early days, we spent a lot of time in senior living communities. And again, like that's my whole background. And what we ended up doing with VR is we actually removed the interface from the end user. So we made it so that way it became something that is given to someone. So a staff member of a community would go in, put the headset onto somebody, and then they lead the entire session from a tablet that they have. And then the older adult really just has to be okay with using the technology. And since you remove any risk of frustration, there's no real risk that anybody really rejects it. And to date, we've delivered nearly 2 million experiences to older adults all over the country, all over North America. Something like, I think we just surpassed 6 years of total time spent in VR by older adults. And it's because it's not frustrating. There's no risk of frustration. They really just get to jump in and enjoy it. And what we see in every single community, I bet you see this too, is there are always early adopters. There's people who will raise their hand and they want to try something, right? And then they'll put it on. And when you see like that Mickey experience, you see the smile come across their face right away, and they lean in and they start reacting to what's happening. Everybody else is like, now, wait a second. Can I get one of those? And then it kind of spreads organically. Good question.
Right. We had one over here, and then we've got another one over there.
And I will say a cool thing I've seen with the VR is the Google Maps, or what is it, Google Earth utilization, where they're bringing people to go and visit their old houses, and some of those reactions are awesome. Yeah. Perfect.
So with the history of like my family with Alzheimer's, and like my grandpa that passed away recently with strokes, and so I've seen like deterioration, and like how you guys mentioned that. So with you and your co-founder, my question is like with the tech that you guys use. So like even from she, I forget your name, sorry, but she mentioned a really good point. If like, someone that's foreign or not, grew up in a farm, does not know anything with tech or anything like that. That's really fascinating how you guys can use that technology instead of like, you're immersed into like, oh, what am I doing? You guys man the ship, which is really interesting. So with that being said, like, with someone that doesn't know anything with like language or anything like that, you guys still have a good response with that in that situation, stuff like that?
Yeah, because it really is. It's one of the benefits of immersion is you're in something that feels so real so quickly that the reaction, it's just so emotional. It's so sudden. One of the important things for people with Alzheimer's disease or more moderate to advanced dementia, it's really hard to just put a piece of technology on someone's head. And so one of the other important things that we do is on our tablet, we encourage staff members, you can show someone what they're going to experience before they experience in VR. So you can kind of create that connection to the experience before they put the headset on. And then one of the things that we see happen a lot in memory care communities is they actually won't put the whole strap on, and they'll kind of just hold it with their hands and bring it up and then be able to put it down. And it becomes just a super natural exercise. But one of the things that, going back to kind of the purposes of this discussion, that I think will happen in senior living is we're going to have a lot more resident technology, like full-time staff members jump into communities, whether or not it's at a full operator group and any single community can call them. There's going to be a rising need for people to come into communities and really just be the guru for technology. And I think that's a pretty cool option for a whole demographic of people who are growing up with technology.
The other thing I would just add, and we'll get to you in just a second here, while the mic's coming over, is that there's just sort of this notion that older people aren't capable or willing to do technology. But when you think about it, the very oldest of the residents, and they're just about all gone, but the very oldest of the residents might very well have come from someplace in the Midwest or the East to California in a covered wagon still. And they lived at a time where there were no cell phones. I'm old enough that I can remember before computers and cell phones, right? None of you guys can, but so they've lived through so much technology change. And I've actually found that oftentimes it's the younger people who are frustrated with the technology, and they make these assumptions about the older people, where the older people are actually okay for technology, more okay than one would, the stereotype would be. So over here, we had a question.
So my question to you guys is, as somebody, I guess, looking far into the future, maybe me or a family member transitioning into a senior living from their own house or apartment, what are some common challenges, both positive and negative things that people experience when transitioning from living by themselves or in their own house and going into senior living? So just a part of that transition, what are some good and bad things that are pretty common for them to experience and that technology helps elevate?
Yeah. Well, I think first and foremost, it's loss of control and kind of what they know. My husband had an uncle who his aunt passed away of pancreatic cancer pretty quickly, and he lived alone and didn't want to move. In fact, Kelly Orenberg helped me. A friend of mine in the senior living went to his house and helped us get him to move. And I think the challenge for them, because he, is that loss of control, loss of belongings. And I think that, from a technology standpoint, there are a lot of things that some of the communities do to keep them in touch with their family, to engage with them. They have newer TVs now and Alexas, and, Best Buy is getting into senior living. So, but I think that they don't want to move because they don't understand how it's going to be when they leave all of their stuff. And I know that one of the things, he would text us and say, I can't move because I have this antique. I go, well, come get it. We'll put it in our basement. It's okay. So I think that, and they do, I think it's age too. They think of senior living that everyone's older and needs a lot of help. And so independent living is very hard to sell that idea to someone who's independent. Even though I think it's great. Someone mentioned it's like being back in a dorm or like your sorority. It's like Golden Girls. I cannot wait to move in with all my friends. I'll be sick of my husband by then. No, no, but I think that's a real challenge for independent living, for sure. I don't know if you guys have any other.
Yeah, I think one of the reasons that people, there's such a big tie to aging in place is because people want to maintain their independence. But if you do that, you're at a real risk for social isolation. And that might sound, I don't know if you guys know the stats, but prolonged social isolation is tied to a 30% increase in mortality rates. It's as detrimental to one's health as smoking 15 cigarettes per day. It's a really dangerous place to be. And so the opportunities that senior living provides, they're just phenomenal. At the same time, it's a hard transition to make. I can say I have one surviving grandparent. He lives in Long Island. He lives alone at his home. He loves VR. And in a recent conversation with my mom, he told her that he could never leave home because his home is his last remaining friend. And when you hear that, like, how do you possibly say go to a community? And I think one of the things that senior living has a real opportunity to do is earlier on in the aging process, figure out how do we start to build relationships with prospective residents way before it becomes a needs-based move and it can just be an opportunistic move.
Yeah, and I would echo being needs-based. I think that's what we find in a lot of senior living today. I think senior living kind of talk about competitors internally, but really their competition's at home. And what the numbers say, and Steve, you probably know better than me, but 93% of people that could live in a senior living community continue to live at home. Sound about right? Yeah. And I find it's a lot of needs-based. So I saw with my grandmother, she was living at her home until she was 90. She fell and was on the ground for 24 hours and her neighbor didn't see her in the window. So when she didn't see that, it was kind of the telltale sign something wasn't right. So, and she was a creature of habit, right? She did the same thing for 40 plus years. And I think what senior living needs to do a better job, to Kyle's point, is get to people younger and kind of changing the narrative of what aging can look like. Because I think I would imagine the majority of people here have a negative stereotype of what senior living can be. And I think the industry needs to do a better job getting the word out and making it college all over again. Hey, it's college without the homework, right? It sounds like a good time.
So I had a couple things. The first thing I would say is that most people who live in senior living are really happy there. That they've built relationships, they're busy. Last 3 or 4 months, I've had the opportunity to stay in several communities, spend time talking to residents, talking to family members, and mostly people really like it. They have relationships and they have friendships. And I've got a 90-year-old stepfather who lives with me now, and he is so lonely, and I've tried everything I can to get him to move into a senior living community, and he won't do it but it would transform his life if he were to do that. And it would make our life easier because he's kind of a pain in the ass, honestly, because he doesn't have any friends and relationships. And so, he's got a few buddies. He gets on the phone and calls, and ugly part, he's chatting with these women who are probably called Bubba in Belarus, that he thinks are women who are interested in him. And the risks are so high. But coming back to your question, the move is really hard, right? I'm sitting at home one day and I either make this decision to move in or my family makes the decision for me, which makes it all a lot worse. And I've got my own house. I got my own stuff. Maybe I'm still driving. Maybe I'm not. Often I'm not driving. And we pack up all my stuff. I take a few of my things. I take my clothing. And all of a sudden I discover I'm in this tiny little apartment. And there's a lot of stuff that I probably don't really use, but still brings me comfort and it's familiar. And I've got to wake up and I've got to get dressed in the morning and I've got to go out to eat breakfast at the right time before breakfast was gone. And then I've got these activities I'm supposed to do, except that I don't really know anybody and it's really scary. This is one of the great opportunities. I don't want to tell you that senior living is perfect. And actually, one of the questions I'd like to get to is we have great opportunities to make it better. But I think that sometimes we in the industry actually minimize how difficult it is to make that decision.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, we offer sales training and then we'll interview residents after. And the overwhelming majority say, I wish I would have done this sooner once they're all acclimated. And so when we train, we say, you need to understand that there's not a want here, and more go at the pace. So, but then after they do it, they make the leap. They say, I wish I would have done this sooner. And so it's really our job to get them there, sooner.
Other questions? Go ahead, Cobb.
No, I was just gonna say, going back to your question about like, would you move into senior living? If there's an if, for me, a big if is you have to be able to eat on your own timetable. Like, huge.
Yes.
Huge.
And snacks.
Snacks.
And snacks. Yeah.
For sure. And good coffee.
And good coffee.
Good coffee.
Yeah. Well, there are lots of things, and that's why you should go into senior living. You have this amazing opportunity to transform the world for older people. The other opportunity, and it's really, I'm going to confess, my other big confession is that as I look at senior living, my passion isn't for older people. Sometimes I don't even like them that much. But my passion is really for the frontline workers these are people who are doing the hardest job. They're cleaning butts and mopping floors, and they just don't get paid enough money and they don't get enough credit. And I'm really committed. My organization is really committed to helping owners and operators figure out how to create better lives for those people. And so it's just there's so much opportunity out there. Other questions?
If you don't mind, I have two questions.
Fire away.
I'll make it quick and short. So my first question is actually earlier, you talked about data analytics and you are a little bit behind of that. So I'm assuming you're trying to collect a little bit more the data, like all these different types of kind of seniors and all that, what they want and their needs and all that, right? So lodging industry, if you go back and think about it, was only one brand. And then there are several different hotel companies and those mother company created a sub-brand. So based on my own understanding, in the senior living industry, I heard independent living and assisted living, and then something else, and the memory care. There are like 3 or 4 sectors. So based upon your call center experience, when you are talking with those potential, clients and the seniors who can go looking for maybe some options, did you ever feel that maybe in the senior living in this industry, you may have more than these 4 segments or sectors in any way possible? So that is my first question, because, there'll be more seniors, it's very obvious. Baby boomers, they're retiring. There'll be more and more and more. So this industry, I think it just started. they're taking some baby steps. And in the future, there could be a lot more seniors. So that was one question I had when you're talking about those data analytics and all that. And then second questions, I'm actually faculty member here too in Pullman. So for our hospitality students, we are going through dramatic, I think it's not maybe hospitality majors only, but all across the college and the universities, our undergraduate student has to develop some new skill set, unless you are computer science majors or something like that, or MIS majors, maybe in the better position. So for our hospitality students, do you see, I'm not sure if you're familiar with our curriculum, but do you see any additional kind of added knowledge or some skill set do you think we'd like to see your future employees like to have? Of course, you can train and whatever necessary, but would you like to see some background? They have it already, they are equipped with. That is another question. I think we need to go through some curriculum changes and at least some modification in the future. So those are the two questions.
So let me start on the first one quickly. It's sort of, you're sitting in a panel like this, and all of a sudden you have just made me embarrassed a little bit for all of us, is that we've been using terms that we haven't defined. So independent living would be not licensed, would be people who are still active. They'd be like most of your grandparents for 20 years afterwards. They've just decided to make that decision for a lifestyle choice. Assisted living is when people need help with things like bathing, dressing, medications, that kind of thing. Occasionally, assisted living might drive. Usually they wouldn't. And then memory care would be people when they're having some form of dementia, cognitive loss. Most memory care communities are locked so that because there's a big risk of wandering. And then one more category I just want to touch on, and that's something that's called life plan communities, or CCRCs. They're both synonymous terms. And typically what happens in those environments, somebody will pay anywhere from about $300,000 to, I don't know, $2.5 or $3 million for some of the really high end, plus a monthly fee. And they more or less guarantee that you can have access to all levels of care for the rest of your life. And so it's really for planners. What did I miss?
Well, and there's, active adult is one of the ones that's, think big campus, 55 plus. There's a lot of that. And I think they're just kind of redefining that to get people to move in earlier, because it seems more like a college campus, of individuals. So I think that and one thing, there's some overlap. I mean, you can live in independent living and bring in home care. So if you only need help with meals, you don't have to go to assisted living. You just live in your independent living. You bring in home care for what you need. And home care can even come in to help with socialization, isolation, sit with you. So there's a lot of overlap there.
There's skilled nursing for acute long-term rehab. There's hospice. Can't ignore hospice.
Yeah. And
Yeah, 55 plus, and then you've got the like the villages down in Florida, which would sort of which is the place.
It's amazing. My friends are looking down there right now. They're like, "We're going to retire at the villages."
Yeah,
they have a tiki party.
Yeah, well, and there's Jimmy Buffett's got these senior living communities that are amazing. I'd move. That's a place where I'd put a deposit down. They're really cool. So
just really quick. I think we can spend a lot of time on both of your questions. On your second question, I think one of the most important things for anybody learning about senior living is understanding that as we think about the aging consumer, older adults, you can't bucket them into one person, right? As you just heard, there are so many different steps in the full aging process. And what we have to be doing, what we all have to be doing, is designing better processes and things that help with every single chapter.
Please.
It's so important. Yeah.
So from my perspective in response.
Introduce yourself.
Yes. Hi. My name is Leslie Simons and I'm with Milestone Retirement Communities. So we have 38 communities across the United States that are AL, IL, and memory care, the assisted living, independent living, and memory care. And my job is mostly in lifestyle and memory care. I do our dementia trainings, but to speak to what you're talking about in the curriculum and to refer back to a point we're talking about up here, what can we be doing to start to prepare people better? Because by the time they're walking into a sales office in a senior living community, something catastrophic has happened. Somebody's been found on the ground after 24 hours. Somebody's broken a hip. Somebody's kid shows up after a few months and says, oh, mom is not managing her world very well. And they realize we've got to do something now. Most of us have pictures in our head of what we imagine that first experience, whether it was a nursing home with a grandparent, whether we volunteered or had a job. We have to walk in the door at this level. You all need to go out and see what it looks like now, because it's very, very different. And until we do that, we're not going to be able to have those conversations, because the populations that are looking to move into our communities are only thinking in terms of nursing homes. They are picturing that institutional, clinical, smells like Band-Aids and urine, that terrifying thing that we all remember from whenever we walked into it. And until we start to have that conversation shift, then we're not going to be able to help people get over that hump. Folks who have been in their homes for 50 years, I can't blame them for not wanting to leave. And they can't imagine, to your point about the college dorm experience, I always refer to many of our residents, this is a high school cafeteria. And I can guarantee you that these people who created businesses, who were superintendents of school districts, were business putting rockets on the moon, all these amazing people who live in our arena, they come from a place of they don't want to move into a summer camp with like 65 of their best friends. This is something that they will appreciate once they get there. But we have to respect who they are, who they've come to be, and validate the fact that we know that this is not something that they've been looking for, but man, it looks a lot better than they're expecting. So how can we break those stereotypes? How can we shift that conversation and not make it about, to Steve's point, I think you made a really good point talking about your stepfather. Making it his idea is going to be the game changer, because I can guarantee you none of these people need our help. These people raised families, some raised grandkids, they ran businesses. We need their help. If you're the kid, Mom, I really am worried about you. And I know that you are managing your world, but it would just make me feel so much better if I knew that somebody was taking care of your meals, or if somebody was making sure that you were getting up in the morning. I can't be here all the time. Shifting that conversation, honoring these adults. I'm sorry, I totally went off on a rant. I've been holding that up this whole time. I'm sorry.
So I want to piggyback off what you said a little bit. A few months, you all know who Jimmy Buffett is, right? I mean, it's not your generation, but you know, okay. So I was at a cocktail party, and anybody who know who Glenn Campbell is? Well, you're sort of in farm country, so you might know. But I'm friendly with Glenn Campbell's widow, and I was at a cocktail party. It was an industry event, and I was talking to a young finance guy, and I said, "Oh, this is Kim. This is Glenn Campbell's wife." And she looked at me and she said, "He'll have no idea who Glenn Campbell is." I said, "Really?" And he had no idea. So that's why I had to clarify. But Jimmy Buffett, it's actually his name, but there are 3 active 55 senior living communities in the country right now that are Jimmy Buffett branded. And so I went to visit one actually just about a year ago. This is where the opportunity is, particularly for those of you who are hospitality people. I mean, if you go out and you go get a nice job in hospitality, right? And at the end of your life, you'll die and you'll have a nice job and a nice career. Or you can come to senior living and you can create something like Jimmy Buffett's communities, where Margaritaville's, where it's transforming the lives of people. They announced that they were doing that. It was actually a different project under sort of an ordinary 55, and they had like 200 people who were interested in these 4,000 houses they were going to build. They rebranded it, started talking about it. They had 40,000 people who said, "I'm interested in buying." If you were old enough, I guess a couple of us are old enough to move in. Nah, I'm old enough. If I were to go there and wanted to buy a new house, it would be 2+ years before I could move in. That's the kind of thing that you guys can do. You can teach us how to change the world for older people, and it'll change you too. So I think we're about out of time. Sort of closing remarks. Did we have? One more. Actually, you asked the curriculum question that we never actually answered, right?
And the first
question. Yeah. About the different levels. The date. Well, yeah. I do think data and analytics for sure. And because in the industry, because we didn't have a lot, I always said we were data heavy or data rich report poor because we didn't know how to make sense. We have so much data and we don't know how to make sense of it. And so there's a shortage of people that can actually look at things within our industry operationally from sales that actually can look at data and say, this is how we change something. It's a skill I think you have to have. It's problem solving. It's actionable insights based on what you're seeing. And because we have so much of it, even the data you're getting, the data you have, hey, are the people that are using these products living longer? What else? What other things are they doing? What are, all of that goes into how we then run our building, our community. So I think that that's something that we really have to understand, even building out models and data and how we can look at data within the industry. I think that that's a huge skill. You guys answer too.
Can we talk about the curriculum? I have so many ideas. I think so. The two things that are easy, and then the one that I think everyone would probably have some good insights here. I think UX is really important. I think it's one of those skills that, similar to everybody should work in sales at some point, everyone should take user experience course, whether or not it's product, whether or not it's design, just UX in general is a skill set we all need. It will make anybody better. There was a second one. I'll remember it. The big one, I think, that what sets senior living aside from hospitality, which I think we all need to be doing a better job of understanding, we talk about during our internal sales or training process a lot, is it's all about stakeholder alignment. And in hospitality, you have one person who wants to go on a trip. And so you have one stakeholder, and then you have, a number of variables, but it could be simplified to like $1 sign, $2 signs, $3 signs, $4. Within senior living, you have the resident themselves, you have the staff members that are going to take care of the residents, you have the family caregiver, you have other family members involved, you have a POA involved, you have whoever's taking care of all of their finances, you probably have some rehab, you probably have some physical doctors. You have a lot of stakeholders and a lot of people who are making this puzzle, but the puzzle that everyone is trying to solve really goes back to life. It's how do we allow this person to live a good, meaningful life? And that goes into my final point, which is I would add psychology, right? Like a lot of what we do is like has those hierarchy of needs. And in order to care for people, which is what all hospitality is about, you need some psych background.
Yeah, I agree. I think the data analytics, and Aaron, as you said, we've got more data than we know what to do with. We're just not very good at figuring out what that means. And so that's a great opportunity. We need more hospitality. I would tell you that I've walked into too many senior living communities where I wasn't treated great. And that's really frustrating. And so you bring some really important skills to us. We're about out of time. Last words, Matt?
Yeah, so I think you look at our panel, right? We're pretty biased towards being pro senior living. I think, as Steve said, it's not perfect, but I think if you are looking for that next career, even just an opportunity to do some good in the world and make a career out of it, senior living is a great opportunity to do that. And you can really explore any aspect of the business side, whether working in those communities or helping those communities, such as, as we're doing up here. And thanks for coming.
I think this is one of the few industries where you can wake up, you can make a difference every single day with the full certainty that that difference is going to translate to so many individuals and also hopefully to yourself. And it's really easy to get excited about.
Yeah, and I think, hospitality sells the building. We work with buildings, they're beautiful buildings, beautiful. I mean, ridiculous, amazing. And people are not moving in because they don't have people like you guys because you just get a feeling when you walk into a building, like Leslie knows. You either feel it or you don't. And it can be as beautiful as can be, but it's really the people that make it. So I think I would just keep that in mind, that there's a lot you can do. We have tons of beautiful buildings, but we need beautiful people that want to make it better, to fill those.
Thank you very much. I'm going to end with a story that's not senior living related. When I was 19 years old, my least favorite grandpa died. And so I went down from Northern California to Southern California to this funeral. He'd been a preacher and a teacher for many, many years. And I've been at my age, I've been to a lot of funerals now, but at 19, I hadn't been to a lot of funerals. And so I was pretty nervous about it. And I remember Saturday afternoon walking into this church where they were doing the funeral service. And there were 1,000 people at his funeral. And it wasn't because he was famous, but he just cared about people. And these were people who came to say goodbye to him because he made a difference in their lives. And so now as I live my life, I tell my kids and I tell my team that I want to have a 10,000 person funeral. And I don't want to have a 10,000 person funeral because I'm famous like Kobe Bryant or Michael Jackson. I was living in Southern California when those happened. I don't want to do it because I'm famous. I want to have a 10,000 person funeral because I made a difference in people's lives. And we've only got one life to live, right? And your opportunity is to have a 10,000 person funeral. And I don't know a better place to do that than senior living. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you. First of all, thank you to our students that are here. We have faculty and staff that are in the room. We have some advisory board members here. We have a few industry people here. Chancellor Chilton, thank you so much for making the time to be with us today. And of course, last but not least, an amazing thank you to our panel. And I need to tell you, this work at WSU that we've done in senior living is because of people like this. Never was my idea. I didn't know what it was. I thought it was a stinky Band-Aid urine place. And people help me. And these are people who help me. And you need to know that, Steve's from the Bay Area, Aaron's here from Denver, my Boston boys here. These people all came out here on their own dime. And anybody who's tried to get to Pullman, Washington knows that's not easy or cheap. And they're all here because of the students. And thank you. We'll feed you dinner. I don't know what else to say. Thank you. Aside from that, please stick around. Our panelists will stay with us. We're going to do a little reception over here. Students in the room, if you have your ID, we have some adult beverages for you and some snacks. So with that, thank you, panelists.